Hello there guys, what is going on? SonOfChelsea back here again. Another video, another Q&A. I've got some really good questions to get through that you guys submitted on YouTube and also on Twitter. I don't want to spend too long with the intro because I think there are some interesting thought-provoking questions that, you know me, will make me ramble on a little bit more, and I don't want this video to be an hour long. But just quickly, like and subscribe. Thanks once again for all of your support on the channel, also on Football London with my article, so go and check out all of that work. But let's get into your questions straight away here from @ThatChelseaPod. Great Chelsea podcast, great guys. Been on their show several times, really good podcast. Please go and check it out. Is Lukaku the worst transfer in Chelsea history? 97 million spent on a player who has struggled and underperformed, but one who we've also struggled and not known how to use well. Seems a very badly thought out transfer. Easy to say after the event. Yeah, we can all be capped in hindsight on these things. I'm as guilty as anyone, and I think, it's a natural part kind of being a football fan, is kind of going, oh, that was a bad decision, when a lot of us were maybe supporting it. I'm not going to hide where my thinking was because it's on video, and I'm not ashamed to be wrong because I've been wrong about football. I'll be wrong about it again. You just have to live with that. I thought Lukaku was going to be the dream signing. I thought he was going to be the replacement to Costa. I thought he was going to bring Chelsea that clinical edge that we've been lacking for so long. Unfortunately, it hasn't really turned out that way for a variety of reasons. I think, as you rightly mentioned, I don't think you can pin all of this onto Lukaku and say he's the only problem within this. I think, again, you can question Chelsea's scouting, even though I was personally excited by it. If Tuchel and the club didn't feel there were things within his game that just wouldn't really adapt and mesh that well to what Tuchel wanted to do with the team on a regular basis, if he didn't want to adapt his game, which I do think is a problem at Chelsea, then it was there were always going to be pitfalls to Lukaku. Lukaku's own sort of feeling that maybe from a very early stage at Chelsea, he already was kind of feeling unsettled, which is just, that's a disaster when you spend that much and already he's feeling sort of out of place. And the interview, I think, is... if he does leave, I think it is the turning point, because particularly on the fan side, because all of those things could have been going on in the background and maybe led up to his interview. But I feel that the mood around Lukaku just switched right then, and I think it's been almost impossible for him to turn it around. And I think that it's just the moment he was getting booed when he got subbed off against Arsenal, for me, was like a point of no return. Not just like, I just don't think it's very healthy. I don't think it's very healthy to have a situation where a player is judged like that. The only situation I've seen in recent years where a player's got that kind of reaction and has evoked that kind of criticism on such a regular basis was Jorginho during the Sarri season, which obviously, if you look at Jorginho's career, if you judged where he was in his first year under Sarri, particularly when he got sarcastically cheered when he was being substituted and booed at certain times, which I think was ridiculous, compared to where he is now, when if he leaves this summer, the reputation he will have, particularly because of the Champions League, when it's night and day. People would have laughed at you back in March 2019 if I told them that he would turn out to be a kind of a hero and a beloved player, by that Champions League win. So things can turn around, but I think if a player is unhappy, why are we keeping them here? You want players who've committed, you want players who feel settled. If he truly wants to go back to Inter Milan and Chelsea can make it happen, I think it's probably the best thing, because then what you'd hope is Chelsea can replace that player with someone who's more suitable. Even if I like Lukaku, and even if I'll enjoy watching him in the future for someone else, for what's best for Chelsea, if it's a relationship that's going to not only hurt what Tuchel wants to do on the pitch, but also the mood around the dressing room, the mood around the club, the sense of unity won't be there, particularly under new ownership when things are so uncertain. You don't want that. And I do think if you're just going based on money, it has to be the worst transfer, because it's the record-breaking one. He was expected to come in and bang goals, and unfortunately, the opening gave us so much hope with Lukaku, because those first few weeks it felt like, yeah, this guy, even with limited chances, is putting away goals. But as I've said in recent videos, as I've written in articles, I do think there is another side to this, which comes down to the system, which I think is a wider conversation of why Lukaku didn't work. And my concerns is, who would you replace him with, and would they have similar issues going into the new season? I think it is the worst, because it's another case of Chelsea breaking a transfer record and it not working out. I mean, we've got a track record of doing it now, so that's a sad thing. Chris O'Flynn asked, do you think Ampadu is a realistic option as a 6, at least for just next season? I'm really worried about seeing the lack of links to DMs. Yeah, I am concerned that Chelsea won't be investing in their central midfield this summer. I mean, it may still happen, and we do have a question about another player in this area. But if Rice is unattainable, Tchouameni's gone, there are other names linked. I saw some people question, adding, I'll tie it in here rather than making it a separate question. I think people brought Basuma in. I think Basuma has interesting attributes, absolutely. But when you look at him compared to, say, our first choice option, I'm like, it's concerning to think we will go another year without investing. But you look at internally, Ethan Ampadu, Billy Gilmore, Trevor Chalobah, we know could maybe move up to that defensive midfield area. Loftus-Cheek, all right. I don't think he's best as a 6. I don't think he's his best position. But if he sticks around, he will likely be used in central midfield somehow. And he's had a year under his belt of fitness and learning Tuchel's system. And Tuchel seems to favour him and like him. So I think he'll get opportunities. And we still don't know. I mean, I think we assume one of Jorginho and Kante are going to leave. I mean, we could be in a situation when neither of them leave. And Chelsea's midfield looks very similar. But I do worry that what's going to happen, and I do think probably the best case scenario where Chelsea are not in an awkward situation if they don't and don't want to commit money to maybe not Declan Rice if they can't get him, then maybe you try Ethan Ampadu. I think his experiences, I think the Chalobah case is such an interesting example of not writing off players because A, they don't have Premier League minutes, but also B, just judging where they've been on loan and saying that because they've been there on loan, you can sort of categorise their quality level. He was at Ipswich, he was at Huddersfield, he was at Lorient, who were trying to avoid relegation in Ligue 1. Like, they were not a top level Ligue 1 side in France. Obviously, I look at someone like Ethan Ampadu, who's been back-to-back seasons on loan with relegated clubs. But that does not mean he's not good enough to make the step up to Chelsea. And I would be interested to see this summer him, Gilmore, be given a chance and see if they can adapt, because Chalobah saved Chelsea a lot of money. And you hope that maybe one of these two, particularly Ampadu, who's maybe been forgotten really, of still how young he is, that he could still impact Chelsea in a positive way. Sergio asks, has the obsession with stats skewed our views of players? I understand end results are important, but we also need to enjoy watching players cook on the field. Hazard had brilliant stats, but we just loved watching him being absolutely brilliant, just like Zola or Juan Mata. There are many different ways and directions I could go with this question. Simply, I do think that stats can become overwhelming to a point that conversations about football can just become boring, where they're not quite interesting. You cannot boil football down to one stat, apart from the scoreline, if the result is all you care about. But as much as we say results matter, there is obviously a lot more to football that makes it interesting. If the result was all that mattered and that was the only thing that you cared about in football, and I know there'll be some people in the comments saying result is the only thing that matters, but I think you get bored of football quite quickly, to be honest, for a lot of clubs, because there are a lot of clubs who don't win on a regular basis. And to be honest, as a Chelsea fan, we're quite lucky that we've seen our club win more than they've lost, even in recent weeks. I think we are quite a privileged bunch to see what we've seen. But I do think that sometimes players and teams, particularly players, are too much judged on, say, a spreadsheet, because data and stats are so accessible now. I think it's a great thing that people can go out and view this stuff, and particularly for me, if I'm with my work and my YouTube, that I can access an FB ref spreadsheet and get kind of a bit of an overview on a player. But of course, that is only a snapshot of them. That does not, a spreadsheet can never tell me if a player is fun to watch. Is he able to sort of deal with pressure? Is he able to deal with adversity? How does he deal in certain dressing rooms, in certain leagues? Does his skill set adapt from one league to the next? These are all questions that I think that people dismiss sometimes and think that they're kind of old-fashioned. I think the reason why certain players have worked and haven't worked at Chelsea in recent years, particularly if you look at good examples like Edouard Mendy, Thiago Silva, Ben Chilwell, I think the reason why those three particularly have settled in so quickly to Chelsea is not only because they're good players, they are good players, but also I think their characters are sort of characters that you want in the dressing room, and they seem to just bounce off others well. So I do think, as I say, going in a different direction with the question, I do think stats, unfortunately, can overwhelm us. And when you bring up, say, Hazard and watching players, absolutely, there is a beauty about football. There are things that, in terms of narrative, in terms of just those small moments, I think, within games and seasons that maybe people don't care about, that can be as enjoyable to watch. I mean, Ziyech's goal against Tottenham back in January is a small moment within the season, really. I think there's so many things in sort of your season analysis you can go to, but that left-footed strike, I mean, that was just incredible. It was a moment of artistry. It really was. And of course, you get those moments and you want to have players that you enjoy watching. And that also is very subjective, to be honest. I mean, I think if you were to ask some people, they love watching Kovacic play football. They love his kind of style of doing things. Another person will really like watching Reece James play football. Reece is one of the players that I just love watching play football. I love the way how easy he makes things look. I think there's just such a comfort watching Reece James, like in terms of the way he, like Roger Federer, I've made this comparison before, the way he's able to cross almost like Roger Federer hits a backhand at Wimbledon. You know, there is an art to it, and that's subjective as well. Just one person's taste in a player is different to another person's taste, and it's like film, isn't it, and food and music. You know, you will have your own sort of taste, and I do agree that I'm slightly concerned that people maybe look too much into stats and put all of their eggs in one basket. I think there are a lot of variables, and sometimes that's why my videos go on a little bit longer in terms of talking about players, because there are many different aspects, and you can't boil a player down to an XG stat. You cannot boil a player down to a spreadsheet. There are things that, unfortunately, and someone who's been writing about football for the past sort of year almost now, you do realize there are so many moving parts to football that it's kind of hard sometimes to find simple answers as much as we want. So I do think it's a good question, and absolutely I think you've got to have that nice healthy balance, because if you just look at stats, I think the passionate and enjoyable and lovable side of football kind of can get drowned out of you very quickly, and I don't think that's as fun or as sort of satisfying as it can be as a supporter and lover of football. Bizarre Blackout asks, hey Dan, do you think we are in need of an attacking midfielder that can actually play the ball forward to our attackers and split defences? I think we have some of those players. If you're talking about attacking midfielders, I mean, I'd class Mason Mount as an attacking midfielder. I guess you'd call him a forward. Maybe you're thinking about sort of a deeper midfielder in terms of, I think I mentioned him the other day, Christian Eriksen, the Cesc Fabregas type, which is kind of the best example we've had at Chelsea from a deep position for many years. Kovacic at times has shown it as well. We do need more creativity in the team. I think that is a key part of, say, the attacking additions this summer. You do wonder like how, say, Conor Gallagher is going to impact things as a player in terms of maybe his contributions from midfield, the amount of goals he scored last season, how big of a pot he was of Vieira's attack. I just think creativity, wherever it comes from, which is why I'm talking about Dembele a lot. I think either you get someone in the centre of the park who maybe can do what, I think very few players can do what Fabregas can do, because he was just a bit of a genius, and he is a very special player really in terms of his like level of generation and his development as a player, and what Chelsea got at the time in terms of how seamless the transition was from Barcelona to Chelsea. It really was quite incredible that summer, one of Chelsea's most successful transfer windows when Fabregas arrived. But I do feel like a Dembele, like someone like that, who's just gonna at times, I think, beat the system, not to sign a kind of demean Tuchel. I think just if Tuchel isn't going to adapt his system that radically, you need maverick players. You need ones who are going to try risky things. And 9 times out of 10, they may not work. But just to have a player who tries those things and tries to play a ball to the centre forward, who makes a run, I'm so tired of watching a centre forward at Chelsea or an attacker at Chelsea make a run that's pointless. And the pass, I've seen people try and make excuses for this and say, well, the pass to forward like Lukaku Havertz is asking for is just ridiculous. Like, he's asking for passes. And then I'm watching from my Stamford Bridge, East Upper Seat, when I see a ball that could be played direct on the floor to him, not asking for this like ridiculous Luka Modric pass against Chelsea. It's just, sometimes it is more of a direct pass to feet. If you're going to get someone who at least can do that a bit more, and Tuchel kind of lessens the restraints at times. I just feel like players are under such strict instructions to pass the ball sideways at times, and look for the wing back, look for those just repetitive patterns. And if you can have either a winger like Dembele or a central midfielder like maybe an Eriksen or someone else who can do that and break those patterns, happy days, because I think it's going to make Chelsea at least a more exciting team and unpredictable team to watch, which I think was a problem at the back end of last season. And finally, Kakeletso asks, hey Dan, love your show. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on the women's team. They've been building a dynasty over the last 10 years, and I think we have a real opportunity to be the flag bearers of the women's game. Can you see them going to the next level under new ownership? I mean, they have kind of been flag bearers, particularly in the English women's game, in terms of getting to the Champions League final last year, in terms of the investment on the team, having one of the best coaches, not only in the women's game, but I just think in football, one of the best coaching minds in Emma Hayes. I think that it was a privilege being able to go to. I covered the final league game of the season at Kingsmeadow. I was in the press box. It was a wonderful day. It really was, to see the team come back from adversity. The 2 goals from Sam Kerr, particularly the second one, that volley was just ridiculous. Real pleasure to see that goal live, and then being in a press conference after asking Emma Hayes a question. It's the team that I think all of Chelsea should be aiming to be. What they've built, their 3 league titles in a row, that's the sort of dominance that you dream about on the men's side that hasn't really been there and competing for titles. And I just think the sort of, you'd hope with Todd Bowley, and he said as much in his statement, and it seems clear that it will continue to be this way because it continues to grow. And as a younger generation of fans comes up, and the interest in it, the broadcast rights, I think getting onto Sky Sports and the accessibility to watch the women's team, is so much easier now. You hope that expands and grows even more in the country and across the world, really. And I think Chelsea, their next big thing is the Champions League. It very much feels like early sort of Abramovich years where Chelsea were quite dominant in their domestic league. But it was that final step to the Champions League. And I think they will get there if the investment continues on that side, because I think it should, because of Emma Hayes, because of some of the incredible players Chelsea have in that team, because of the team spirit too as well. The mentality of those players is quite unique, that they keep going and going and going every year, that intensity and the quality of players. And I think particularly when we've been frustrated with things on the men's side, I think if you look at the women's game and the women's Chelsea team, there is very little, I think dead weight in terms of looking at that squad and the way it's been built and thinking that, players don't look awkwardly out of place. There isn't this sense of waste within what Chelsea spend in that game to invest on the squad, and there's a succession plan when players move, things that just on the squad building side, Chelsea men's could learn so much from the women's team. It's incredible. So I do think that they're only going to get better. And I would say if you don't watch the women's game that regularly, I think the quality continues to get better. I think the accessibility to games, if you want to go and watch, particularly if you're over here in the UK, if you want to go and watch games at Kingsmeadow, I highly recommend it. I think it's a wholesome atmosphere, because sometimes the men's game, I think with some of the problems we've seen recently of crowds and the cynicism and kind of how negative those things can be, I think maybe if you want to sort of freshen things up and kind of support that team, I think it is absolutely worth it. And hopefully next season they can still be competing with the league for Arsenal, Man City, Man United. I think it's going to, as the game grows, it's going to become more competitive, and it's not going to be as easy, I think, for Chelsea to stay at the top. But I do think they are absolutely worth your support, and I do think they're only going to get better. That is it for today's Q&A. Thank you guys so much for taking the time to watch it. If you did enjoy it, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.